Ishmael, my days at Dance Theater Workshop in the 80s, and Beverly, my days at ASU. So it is amazing journeys continue to twine together. Let's talk about this journey tonight. So Eiko, Beverly, you start. Eiko, where did this idea come from? For years and years and years, you have to understand, you never said the word Eiko without coma. Without coma. And Eiko and coma created 46 pieces over the course of the year as a duet. We were privileged to commission many of that work, and whether it was at Smoka or at the Modern in New York City, live installations at the Walker, performances on land, on sea, and in the air. So Eiko, here you are now as a solo artist. Tell us how you started this.
Well, thank you, Karine. Yes, I worked with Karine as Eiko and Coma, many pieces in Dartmouth, yes, and then also here. So this is the first time I'm working with Karine without coma. Yes. Thank you very much. A common friend, Karine and I have a common friend who have supported Eiko and Coma's work as much as Karine have done. And about when I was starting to think about what I have not done in my life. And both Coma and I knew we have not done divorce, and we have not done the solo work. We have not done the divorce yet, but I and he had started to work alone. And it's since 2014, I've been doing a solo, but I really don't know exactly how to make a solo evening in theater because I was working with Coma and with various other collaborators. So I went onto the street and I went to perform in the park and public places. And along the way, I got a little lonely. So, but I'm not going to go back. So therefore, I talked with that friend and we kind of came up with this idea of a duet project, which I am performing with Ishmael without Beverly at Gamage next week on Saturday. In that project is an idea that I perform with many different collaborators. And sometimes presenter can suggest a collaborator and I don't have to be obliged. So came Beverly's name from North Carolina and somebody thought about we two would be good together, but we did not know each other. And she went to Beverly and said something like, Eiko does what you do in the painting in dance. I'm not sure if she liked that description or not.
So Beverly, it is amazing that as a visual artist, you imagine something that didn't hang on the wall. You imagine something that would hang in our hearts. I think you and I were sitting in London having a little aperitif in a little pub. And you said, let me explain to you what I just did with Eiko. Please.
Jody, who is the head of American Dance Festival in Durham, North Carolina, was the person who said, I think if you met Eiko, you would like her and you guys could collaborate. I thought, I don't know anything about dance. What? Like, no. And so I met Eiko. I was supposed to fly to Colorado to see Eiko. It was my birthday, I remember. And I get to the ticket counter at the airport and they said, oh, your flight's been canceled. And so I couldn't get to Colorado Springs where she was. And when she finished there, she showed up at my door via Uber at like 10:30 at night. So I was like, oh, I really like her because now she's like going to be living up in here with me. So we hit it off. We stayed up, we talked, we talked about collaborating. She told me that she was a caretaker for her mother who was living in Japan. And of course, I'm a caretaker for my sister, Renee. And so she said, we can do this about caretaking. And so in a nutshell, it was in the middle of the school year, she called me and said, if you want to meet my mother, you need to come now because she's dying. And so I begged my boss and got on a plane that was 23 hours to get to Japan, and I met her mother. And so the audio that you heard out there is when I met her, and I got there and she was dead. So that's how it all started. So,
but in a way, lucky maybe, I don't know. I couldn't really get a cremation date, so I had to keep the body for a week. So she arrived, and then we had a party. So she actually met my mom every day for like a good week.
right. She said, go talk to my mom. And I was like, say what?
But also she met all my cousins, my friends, my family, my sons, and gosh, nobody knew who she was, why she's
I was the only Black person in Japan, right? Get that straight.
But it was a very strong bonding experience.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I didn't really plan to have a very different person in a funeral of my mom, but I was producing the funeral. And, she was there with my son. It's completely got bonded. My son is American, of course. So it was just a very strange way. We had an experience that we fed each other.
Yes. So I want to add one more thing. So we're in Japan, and she's like, I want you to, participate in the funeral. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And so she says, they're going to bring out, mother's ashes or bones, because they don't crush them like they do here. And, he's going to describe which bone is which. And then we're going to have family member come up 2 at a time and pick up with chopsticks the bones and put them in an urn. And it was really important that you didn't put her in there face down, like head down first. So I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't know. I can't even eat with chopsticks. What? And so I ended up with a cousin of hers.
You were teamed up with the Coke.
No, it wasn't.
No,
it wasn't.
I teamed you guys up. And I was really worried because Yuta is also not so good with, you did it twice maybe. Who knows? Okay, let's not argue. This is not the argue.
But it was quite the experience. I've never, ever experienced anything like it in my life. And I must say, grief is the same, whether you're in Japan or here or wherever you are. Grief is the same. It's a loss. And, it's a ritual. One that, golly, Eiko wants me to come and paint her dead too when she dies.
Yeah, my son is supposed to call her right away. When
you do that. When you do that.
Ishmael, you have won every conceivable award, including 5 Bessies.
4.
Okay, I just gave you an extra one. I'm going to be on the phone to them. Now it's New York Live Arts and let them know. I think it's really a critical time for artists who are at their seminal point and how you continue to make new work. I was in Hamburg, Germany for a few weeks this summer, and we spent time just talking about artists at this stage. So would you talk a little bit about that, and then your response when Eiko called and said, Ishmael, come and do this project with me?
No, it's really interesting because, as Eiko always reminds me, I'm 6 months older than she is. Even though she doesn't remember when my birthday is, she knows it's 6 months before hers. And it's really, I think it's really important for artists to remain vital, like to keep making. I know some artist friends of mine who've stopped, and it's not healthy. I mean, like, as long as I can do what I can do, I do it. So it's interesting also because in the field of dance, it's very youth oriented. You know, dancers retire when they're 35. I mean, in old school, that was the thought, like after you're a certain age, you're not supposed to dance. You know, people don't want to see old folks on stage, like in certain genres. I mean, tappers always got away with being older, but I think it's really exciting. I feel really vital. I feel really, I mean, I do my own work. I just premiered a piece last year, and but the phone call, it's, yeah. In 2016, when Eiko was exploring the duet projects, and she asked me to come in, I had been a fan of hers since the 80s, since dance theater workshop days. Eiko and Coma, you know, she always says that she wasn't a part of the downtown avant-garde scene, but yeah, she totally was. And we always went to see them, like wherever they perform, we would go see them. But I was not friends with her. I mean, I did not know her personally. But she asked me to be in that. There was a series, she did a series of different people, Vasily and other people, Baby Miller was in a whole, Elizabeth Streb, a lot of people. She just asked a random group of dancers to be in her duet project. So I did, did it. I remember the first first meeting we had at St. Mark's, Dance Space Project at St. Mark's Church was doing it. And I went in with Yvonne Meyer, another dancer friend of mine. And the first thing I heard Eiko say, and I sort of revered this woman, you know, she and Coma have a certain mystique, a certain aura. And she's sitting at the table, and the first thing out of her mouth was, "I'm so hungover." And I thought, well, I can work with this person. And I thought it was successful. It was like a one-off. I think it was one evening that we did. And then when this came up, I was not in the original iteration with Beverly at the American Dance Festival, but I've done it in 3 other venues since then. And I like the fact that it's malleable. The casting is totally malleable, which is part of the title, actually. Distance is malleable. So different people are in it. I've been in, this will be my 4th time I've been in it. And it's, yeah, I just thought it was really kind of incredible. I was really eager, willing, and she's out of her effing mind. And in a really good way. And it's like, you know, it's like, I don't know if people realize that there's a very strict score of the piece, the direction of how we go through the gallery, and that our score is to respond to Beverly's paintings. But there's no real set choreography in the piece at all, that we're making it up as you're watching it. So, which is really kind of and it's the way I like to work. But just going back briefly, when she told me I was going to be working in it in Portland, Oregon, she showed me videos of the American Dance Festival with Beverly. And I said, "Who is that woman?" And she showed me slides and videos of the paintings. I said, "I have to meet this woman." Because I thought it was really weird. I'd never heard of her. I think of myself as, you know, well versed in the art world, and particularly of artists of color and female artists. And I said, Beverly McKeever? I've never heard of her. And I was shocked and embarrassed that I'd never heard of her. And then I was at Duke for a meeting, just a random meeting. And in the dance building, there was a live painting. It was the first time I saw a live painting of hers in it. So this is like heaven on earth, just to do this with her.
Thank you. Beverly, there's an interesting journey that many visual artists are thinking of. Sanford Biggers, I think of the work that Sanford's doing with medicine and a number of things. Did you think that you were one of those visual artists who said, "I must turn this into a performance"?
No. No, not at all. I mean, I'm really a very, very shy person. And I mean, every time Eiko's like, "Come on, take off your clothes." I'm like, "What? I ain't doing that." I mean, so, you know, she's basically like dragged me kicking and screaming to perform with her. And I trust her and I love her, and that's the reason that I do it. But I'm not gonna do it anymore. Look, she's like, yes, you are.
You know, it's been an interesting time for art and culture since we went through the Great Pause. Can each of you talk about how the Great Pause, COVID, impacted your work, your collaborations?
Two things. So all the perform, I remember 2020 March, I nearly lost my mind. Everything got canceled. You know, like 2.5 years ahead, everything got canceled, right? I was very lucky, however, because in my solo work, I perform outdoors mostly. So then pretty soon my performance in graveyard was restored. The first thing I do in a COVID was graveyard performance. That kind of made sense to me in a way. You know, it was recognition of, and it was often the first time the people came out after 6 months, even in the graveyard, because we knew so little about COVID back then, you know, summer of 2020. I also got a lot of different people thinking, you know, because administrators, producers were also thinking what to do. And unlike us, they were on the salaries, so they even have to think harder. So I got a lot of work in a strange way, like writing, podcast, speaking engagement on Zoom. And I'm not a public speaker, but somehow but I wanted to accept those engagement. So that's one. And it kind of resulted recently, I even created a whole evening of a monologue, which I would have never thought about it unless I began to write and speak in COVID. And another is actually recognition of friendship, because we all became very afraid to meet people. But then I realized with friends, even afraid, we made exceptions. So I kind of became awareness of, I started to think about friendship as someone I would make exceptions. And I trusted that. And so it kind of got to deepen my engagement with my collaborators and my friends, rather than casually meeting everyone, you know, who are having a good time. It became much more selected instinctively, like whom I really needed to be with. And these are definitely two people I love being with.
Beverly, what about you?
Well, I felt like I was praying for COVID to happen because I was so busy and just running and not having a time. And I'll never forget, I sent our students left for spring break. And they were like, we'll see you when we come out. I said, okay, have fun. And you know, Duke students, they were like, we're going everywhere. We don't care about COVID. You know, we can travel all over the world. And we never came back to class. It just ended with their work half done on the easels. And I was like, thank you, God. Because what it provided for me was what I wanted most, which was time to paint. And so I did a lot of work. The piece that's in the show, that's the rope painting, where it looks like it's funny because white people say, oh, it's her dreadlocks blowing in the wind, because they're sort of wrapped around my head. And the Black people like, no, that's a noose. Hangings, you know? So, but I made several of those paintings. And just, I mean, it was very, a lot of fabulous work that I did during maybe 15 paintings during COVID. So I was grateful.
That you had a good pandemic.
I had a good pandemic.
Good pandemic.
Ishmael,
how about you?
I had a similar response. I thought COVID was kind of good for me. And it was good and sort of the worst thing that could possibly happen to me, because I like being alone. I don't like going out. And I said, oh, and I kept all my teaching jobs because they all converted to Zoom. So I was teaching a lot more than I actually usually do, because I was teaching at NYU and MIT on the same day, which I couldn't do in the real world. And then we got a commission from a foundation in Northern California, and the piece had to premiere there, and all the participants except for myself were on the West Coast, and I was in New York. So and I only knew one of the people. I didn't cast the piece, but my collaborator Keith Hennessy cast the piece. And the first 4 to 5 months, all the rehearsals were over Zoom, which sounds weird, but it was actually really interesting, because usually in dance situations, you go to a quote unquote neutral white walled studio, and everybody's the same. But all of a sudden we were rehearsing in Zoom, and everybody was in their own habitat with their pets and their lovers and their dishes and their books. And I sort of got to know them better in a way than I would have in a studio. And then after I got vaccinated, sort of 4 or 5 months later, I went out there. We got a retreat. We went to a retreat center where we were alone and rehearsed sort of really, daily and for many hours a day for like 2 weeks. Then went back to doing it on Zoom. We made a video about that. Then, and then we got a residency on Fire Island last summer. So that was really lovely for 3 weeks. And then we premiered in San Francisco in November. Then we traveled to Atlanta this spring. So I've been teaching on, and also I don't really teach dance technique. I teach sort of composition, so I can sort of give them an assignment and say, okay, come back in 20 minutes and I'll see what you did. And I go have coffee in my pajamas, and it was a really wonderful way of teaching. I was in my apartment. It was just like, cool. So let's hear it for COVID. Yeah.
One thing I admire about all of you is that indeed you are teachers and you are mentors. I happen to know Beverly, one of your mentees, is here. Can you talk about that role and responsibility as artists?
I take it really seriously, and I used to think in my younger years, like 50s, I used to think of, I do dance, but I do that to make money. I realized that teaching is part of my art practice. Like I get ideas, ideas, and it's very generative working with people, working with young people. And I've been a mentor to several people specifically. And I find that kind of like dialogue, like thinking with someone who's just beginning and just finding themselves and remembering how I was then is really key and really, yeah. And also I steal ideas from them too. Like, it's like, I'm not.
Beverly.
So when Kim was curating this exhibition, we decided that it was really important for me because I believe in reaching back and bringing other people to the table. So we decided that it would be a great idea to have the students that I had mentored across at ASU and all the other places that I worked participate in my retrospective. So one of those rooms is just of student work in good company, is that right? And it's got several of my students. So when the show opened in February, I came back and, all my students were here.
Wow.
It was unbelievable. I mean, I felt like, and they were also old now because they were 20 when I was teaching them, and I was 40, and all of a sudden they were 40.
You're still 20.
And I'm still 20. So teaching is really, really important to me. I love inspiring. I love when the light bulb comes on. I love when my painting students say to me, painting is hard. And I think, who told you it was easy? Where'd you get that memo from? So yeah, I'll keep doing that because it's important to me. And people help me.
Yes.
I mean, the show has my mentors in there. And I tell you what, I wouldn't be where I am if it hadn't been, for Faith Ringgold, who I was like, I don't know no Black artists. And, she was like, what about me? I'm Black, I'm a woman. And I was like, you sure are.
Eiko? Yeah, I love teaching too, as long as I keep it part of the year. But on Saturday, when I perform in Garbage, two of my collaborators are both my student, ex-student, but they were that way long time ago. So every time I teach, I don't select people, but I end up making young friends. And not because I choose them, but because some of them continue to be in touch with me. So I see them further beyond my class. I don't really like to be teach. I just want to be an instructor or kind of workshopy way. But certain way, it's not because I'm a good teacher, just because circumstance or the way their need is such, we just click, right? Just like any human. So I'm very grateful. The teaching actually make me learn newer generation, younger people. I began to teach when my two sons were in college age, so I had no empty nest syndrome. Now I actually teach much younger people. It also makes me aware, like what they do not remember. So I just did a monologue of 9/11, 20th year. So when I began to teach, every student knew, remember. But now I'm teaching them who are not even born 20 years ago, right? And it's meaningful for me. There's a point of me being old that I actually can tell something that I wanted them to know. And that's also true of the Second World War, because I remember those wars, not because I was alive, but because my parents' generation. So my older friends, I remember how they talk about it, those who experienced it. So now I'm actually delivering, using myself as a conduit. And when that conduit actually brings something, and I can see it arrived, there is a very deep pleasure and more appreciation to those who actually gave me that conduit earlier. So I'm really appreciating that.
Thank you. We're going to take the next 15 minutes and open it for question and answers. And I would ask you, as you were thinking about those question and answers, we would love to hear from you at which point of this evening's performance really stuck with you. What was the image? What was the moment? That's my homework to you, but you can ask the questions you want to ask.
And is it possible to turn up the lights?
That would be great.
And I want to remind everyone we're on live stream, so you might want to blurt out your question. But wait until I can get the microphone in front of you so our virtual audience can hear your question as well. So questions, there we go. We've got a question already.
Hi, how's it going? My name is Jake Hernandez. I'm a student at ASU. I take painting classes at ASU. So my question's for Beverly. I would love to have my own exhibitions and everything, and be in national portrait galleries like you are. So what's a good roadmap for that? What should I be doing now to make that a reality?
I always tell students that your job as a creator is to keep creating. Put the work out there, get it out there, apply for shows so that other people can see it. And, the rest will just happen. It can't, students, I'm teaching a professional development class this semester, and I was polling these graduate students about what they wanted to learn. What do you want to get out of this class? And several of them said, I want to make some money. And I thought, yeah, you need to change careers then. But it's, I've just been, my job, make the artwork. I don't care what the audience really thinks. I'm not thinking, they're not guiding me to say, will this sell? I'm not thinking that in the studio. I'm just making it and I'm putting it out there. And, it's working. It's working. Can I tell one more quick story, just quickly? The National Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C., they just sent an art handler to my house, my studio, because I did this portrait of Norman Lear, who is the, let's see how old everybody is. You have to, like, I said this to my students, and they were like, who's Norman Lear? So I did this portrait of Norman because I went out to his house in California. He was so fabulous, and I love him. And he just turned 100 last month. And so the portrait, I wanted to give the portrait to him, but anyway, they were like, no, you're doing that. And the the curator at the National Portrait Gallery came and picked it up last week. Yeah, so it'll be in their permanent collection.
Hands up questions. Here's one here in the back. Hold on.
Don't mind me looking up Norman Lear. Okay. Hi. This question is for all three of you. I was wondering, when you do art, you are sharing your heart with a group of 30, 40, 50 more, this group in specific, like maybe up to 50 people. How do you balance, all the emotion that goes into it? And how do you take that home? And how do you, you know what I'm trying to say. Okay.
That's a great question.
It's a great question. I have no idea what the answer is. In tonight specifically, there was this really strong score of responding to Beverly's work. And it wasn't that I wasn't thinking of y'all, I don't want to, but I was mainly thinking of what the triangular relationship was between my response to Beverly's paintings. And there's a lot to respond there. They're like really emotional and really gut-wrenching, some of them. And some of them are funny, actually. But really responding to how that was. And then also responding to Eiko and her responses to the paintings. And I wasn't ignoring you. I was aware that there was a group of you there, but you were probably the least important part of the collaboration at that point. I mean, I was getting energy because the 5 o'clock show, there were fewer people at the 5 o'clock show than the 7, and the energy was different. There was definitely a different energy. But I try not, for myself personally, and it's just a personal thing, I try not to be tripped up by wanting a response or anticipating a response from an audience. Like I assume they're intelligent people and they're feeling people, and they can figure out what they're feeling and thinking on their own. They don't need me to tell them. So that's me.
Well, when I first got here, I think it was Monday. It seems like I've been here for a couple of years. But when I first got here and Ishmael was in the space, and he and Eiko were sort of just practicing, warming up kind of thing, and responding really quite spontaneous to the work. And Kim and he got in front of my cousin Sharon, which is the paintings of Sharon pushing up daisies, my cousin who lost several of her limbs and died of diabetes. And he was just responding to the work. And Kim and I were standing there, we just started crying like babies, just watching him, because he honored her in the painting that I did of her so beautifully, so it was like, it was the pain in him stomping his foot, like losing a leg and not being able to walk. And it was just so beautiful that we were like, oh shit, how am I gonna make it to the show?
I'm a ham.
Yes.
So today, my job was not to be a ham. And that's one, I knew about this. That's one of the reasons I invited Ishmael to join. I mean, like it was up to me in a way, whom or nobody, because she and I worked alone before. But we did that already. And we were good in ADF. We did as much as we could. And they invited her to other places, and she didn't want to do it. So I began to invite other people because I didn't only work with young people. Then I started to look like a teacher. So I wanted to mix in my duet project a different age, different professionality of those, so that there's a different dialogue. So I knew Ishmael, and he was wrong saying I just invited random people how many years ago. I only invited the people whom I respect, just to clarify my credit. But this time, like today, I was completely freaked out because there was lots of people in the gallery. And the only thing I can think about is, dear God, people, you guys, don't back up to the point of touching the painting. And I was like, I know there are great security people and they were all involved, but of course, I also would feel responsible if something happens, right? So I don't want to be the one who is blaming other people. So like I was very aware, what to do. And I often did the certain move to make the people away from the painting, to be honest. But not only that. I only did it because I could then have a very different relationship. So Ishmael earlier said, well, we are improvising, but we had a score. And the score really is, this is Beverly's show. And I invited Ishmael from the very beginning. You pick up certain paintings and you respond. And I pick up certain painting, I respond. But then together we are actually, and then of course Beverly is brought in. So that we actually had a pretty complex possibilities on that, right? And within that, we ran it maybe like 4 or 5 times before the performances, and each time was different. But I tell you, doing that in an empty gallery is very different compared to doing it for you. So I was very aware, and Ishmael wasn't aware. He just revealed, and I'm kidding. Knowing him, he was very aware.
There's 2 questions down here.
2 more questions. We'll start here.
Hello. I am an ASU dance student. I'm a really big fan of your work, Eiko. Really interested in site-specific dance. I was wondering, in pieces such as River, where you go to so many different places and you can't change the place, you have to change the work to fit it. What do you find with those different places? How does it change for you? How does it impact your art?
Well, I want to answer to the connection to what happened tonight, because just so that it will be relating. So originally, Kim invited me to perform here on the stage because she had a painting that we used to move around on the stage, and we had easels, and this is how it's choreographed. So I could have done it here, but my gut's very strong reaction was no. I wanted to be in a gallery. Same is true. When we thought about a piece called River, R-I-V-E-R, we wanted to be in the river. After that is really a safety issue. I can only be in a river, and I actually got pretty sick 3 times, even though I was careful. So we need to make sure, just like paintings in Beverly's show, then we have to bring in practical thinking. Do the audience know where it is? Is there a parking lot? Is it beautiful? Or is it had some significance? And can we be safe? And so those things plays out together. And this is only to say it's always collaboration with presenters. And here Julie was with us all the time. Right, and anytime we are talking about something completely different idea, she would be the first one to freak out. And she's so freaking out, I would pity her and then say, let's not do it that way. And that's a part of the collaboration because, what's the point of freaking people out, even though idea was completely valid, and we just take that idea somewhere else, right? So it's a very practical with both creative, strange ideas, but then how to place it where. It's really a kind of negotiation. And I don't take no very easily, but I don't go beyond what is possible.
I would also say Eiko was the first artist that ever said to me, come and sit in the theater, watch this, and then tell me what you think. And I went, usually I hire an artist. I've known their work or fell in love with them and said, okay, do what you're going to do. But Eiko was the first one that said, tell me what you think. Are there changes you think I should make? And I remember being in the theater at Dartmouth going, wow, that's very interesting. And I want to say there were three, because of that, I developed my three questions. What do you want? What do I want? And what do we want together? And as a presenter, I find that's critical, whether it's performance work, visual work, film work, to have those three questions.
Can I just add to this? Because I don't want misunderstanding. I actually don't listen very well. And in fact, our common friend Sam used to tell me, oh, I can tell you anything because you never listen. And that's not true. I sometimes, if it makes sense to me, I do listen. But the reason perhaps I was inviting her to but I don't remember actually, but I'm pretty sure I did. Because sometimes hearing the feedback reveals that person. So if I'm interested in Karim when we met, then what else do I do? Either I invite them to my house for cheap dinner, or I invite them to see my performance or our performance, and they hear their thought. And it's not to make our piece better necessarily, but to know who that person is. I'm always telling my students, don't even believe feedback makes the piece better. Sometimes it does, but not always. But it's certainly you get to know that person's preoccupation, assumptions, opinions. And those are kind of lovely part of being an artist because I get to know many people that way.
Exactly.
Yeah, I am. Hello, there we go. I'm one of the students from ASU just a few years ago. I was the part in the overall performance that was the most meaningful to me was the moment when Beverly was painting and the two of you were dancing together. And it was all three of you were creating art at the same time, each in your own unique way. And so the question I have is, as teachers, obviously you're constantly teaching others, but also as teachers, you're constantly learning. Out of this experience that you did together, what did you learn from each other?
Great question, and a great question to close this out. That's terrific.
Thanks, Beverly. I don't know. I'm going to think. It might take time to process, actually, of actually trying to think of what. It was a great experience. I've not collaborated with a lot of painters. I have in a few instances. I've done a lot of collaborative work with composers, filmmakers, etc., set designers. I'm trying to think of what the takeaway. From that other question the young lady asked earlier, I remember if I take stuff home, I don't usually remember my dreams, but last night I dreamt I had a nosebleed, which I like a really serious, like my nose was bleeding a lot, which I think had something to do with the show. Not sure. Yeah, it's hard to tell. I really don't know what. I mean, it sort of deepened my relationship with Eiko as a collaborator. She listens to me sometimes, which is shocking.
Well, actually, I do.
Yeah.
It's shocking to me too.
Yeah. Because she wanted to do a lot of monkey business that I was just going, no.
It's my process. I usually shade it off by them, but you are right. I mean, I do listen to him because, he's just as long as career as I have.
I'm 6 months older too.
Yeah, 6 months old. I came to New York before you.
I was in Philadelphia.
That's okay. But I think I'm answering your question. I think I learn a respect to my colleague. And maybe I wouldn't call it necessarily a colleague because the field is divided. But at the same time, we are artists, right? So, the world is a shit place. I'm sorry for the language. And sometimes I get pretty annoyed. What have I been doing? I'm not even American. Why am I here after so many years? And so many shit happens both in the world and in America. So I sometimes get embarrassed by just doing my own work, right? But when I work with other people, the honesty of it, the morale of it, the conscientiousness of it, which is also reflecting myself. I don't think they are more conscientious than me. I think we are in the same level conscientious in a way. I feel that. I'm not raising myself, and that is very, very encouraging to me. So even though there is not much I can do about the world, I can do whatever I can. But to create a dance time that I'm with you, that could have a same weight as the war. Not in a historical significance, but for somebody who was here tonight, not to erase the memory of the war or knowledge about the war of any kind, but we could have almost the same weight for that little time. So that's my very strong ambition. And I wouldn't even believe it if it's for myself. But when I see others, I am more encouraged to continue.
Right. Beverly, it was just yesterday, you and Kim led a tour for public, and I came to see it. And just hearing Kim and you talk about the work was really informative to me. It really helped me understand the work, especially the one painting that I danced with the woman dancing, Doris dancing. It's just like, as I was attracted to that because it was like not one of your depressing pieces. Even though I love it, I gravitate to the depression work a lot. Like I was on the floor with that, yeah. But the dancing, and that you explained that it came from a dream about this woman who was in a nursing home dancing. And so it informed how I approached that. What did you learn this week?
Well, I think what Eiko said about being on the same level, like really understanding each other and having the same motivation to evoke feelings in whatever discipline, it's a beautiful thing, right? Because I was like, you can dance in the gallery? What? So I'm surprised they let her do it. Because we tried to steal some paintings earlier this week.
I did them.
Yeah. It's your idea.
Well, I would like to close this out by saying, yes, I would do. We're now into artistic theft. I would like to close this out by saying, dear God, thank you for Eiko Otake. Thank you for Beverly McKeever. Thank you for Ishmael Houston Jones, because you are our second responders. You are the ones who are going to get us through this post-pandemic. You are going to help us heal, help us live in harmony, help us continue to wonder, be challenged, live out loud, live quietly, be human. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tari. Thank you.